Hey everybody, it's Josh here with Zoo Studios, and today we're going to do something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time, and that's to do a deep dive into the rule book. So when everyone gets their game, if they've watched this video, they will have no problems. They won't even need to read the rules probably. They should just be able to jump in and start having fun. I'm not actually going to do the whole rule book right now. I think that would be a little bit too long and a little bit too weighty of a video. So I'm probably going to split it into two. The rule book isn't that long. It's only 20 pages. So maybe I'll do the first 10 now and do the first and then the second 10 in another video. So without further ado, let's just jump into this. What do we have here? We have the rule book cover. So there you go. Nice little cover. Then you open up the rule. We have this little introduction that I'll go ahead and take a second to read. It says, welcome to Zoo Tiles Hime. We're glad you're here. And we are glad you're here. Zoo Tiles Hime is a strategic tile placement game loosely based on the creatures of the Chinese zodiac. With this 2-player starter set, each player will choose a pre-constructed deck, either the tiger, dog, horse deck or the rabbit, pig, ram deck, to see who between them can outthink and outplay the other. Players earn points by creating patterns of compatible creatures or by capturing opposing creatures. The first player to 12 points wins. Happy playing! And then here we have what we call the anatomy of a zoo tile. And there isn't just one zoo tile, but this is probably the most important one. This is an example of a creature tile. And so what you'll see here, without going into super detail on this and pointing out every single little thing, the two important things to know is this little symbol here that's at the top of the tiles. It's larger, it's round, it's got a gold ring around it. That is the tile icon. So that's the icon that represents this tile. And then there are smaller icons that run up and down the tile. And if you see them, those are the ones that are compatible with this tile. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Some other things, there's a strength and intelligence value for creatures, items, and obstacles. But again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then down here you see a lot of text talking about tile description. And what is that? That's basically just pointing out that, yeah, down here there's some words. And these are basically the rules for this tile, for the tile. One thing that I mentioned here that I don't go into too much detail is how to customize a deck. And so if you see a number at the bottom of a tile, like for instance, let's take a look at that. Let's see if there we go. I don't know if you can see the 4 at the very end there. It's in brackets. So if you see a number like that on a tile, don't worry about that too much now. That has to do with customized deck construction. And so the purpose of this starter set 1 is just to get people playing the game and having fun and getting to know it. And then when starter set 2 comes out later next year, it'll be in the earlier part of next year, we'll talk a little bit more about deck construction. And obviously when the game comes out and people start playing with it, they're probably going to want to start creating customized decks right out the gate, and that's totally fine. So that number there, just to give you the quick and dirty version, is the maximum number of that tile that you can have in a customized deck. So you saw 4 on that tile, so you can have no more than 4 in your deck. There's not a blanket number like in some trading games where it's like you can only have 4 of everyone. If you don't see a number, you can have as many as you want, and if you do see a number, then you can't have more than that number. So that one's 4, some of them are 3, some of them are 2, some of them are 1. So that's basically what this little part was saying, is go ahead and disregard that number if you're not interested in creating customized decks. But I know a lot of you are, so I figured I would just kind of quickly point out what that number is. All right, let's turn the page. I have some pretty more straightforward stuff. Players, 2 players, tiles. This basically just explains a little bit about the tiles that you got in the box. There's 2 starter decks, or the starter set has 2 pre-constructed decks, I should say. Each pre-constructed deck has 40 tiles, so you'll have 40 tiles, your opponent will have 40 tiles. And if they ever get mixed up, so we're going to be these are going to be available at launch. These are going to be sleeves for your tiles that we made, and you can sleeve them up. But if you don't want to sleeve them up, and the tiles get mixed up. As long as you don't mix it up with another starter set, the way you can easily figure out, you know, what deck what tile goes into is you can just take a look. There's a little code at the bottom right there, and all the tiles have one of those, have one or two codes in there. One of them is RPR, and the other one is THD. RPR stands for Rabbit Pig Ram, and THD stands for Tiger Horse Dog. So if you're playing with someone and they fall over on the table or fall on the floor, and you're like, oh my goodness, you know, they're all mixed up, how am I ever going to figure it out? You can just look at the bottom, put one stack of THD and the other stack of RPR, and you're good to go. Another way to do it is at the very back, you see there's a reference deck list. So if you don't want to go that route, you can just you know, follow these deck lists, and you'll be able to sort the two decks back into their original form. Okay, so that talks about the tiles. The playing area, very straightforward. You just need a flat playing surface. To win, the object of the game is to score 12 points on a 2-player game. It changes slightly on a multiplayer game. I don't go into multiplayer too much here because, again, the focus is just to buy this game, crack it open with a friend, and play just you two. And then from there, we'll start to expand on things like multiplayer, customizing decks, you know, all that stuff. Organized play. We definitely want to start doing some organized play. So, but that's a little bit outside the scope of what we're doing with the very first starter set. So, so don't talk about that much. Yeah, win. First player score 12 points, and then if a player needs to draw a tile, but they can't do it because they're out of tiles, then they immediately lose the game. And we talk about setting up. Setup is pretty easy. So each player has their 40 tile deck. What you do is you take those, you randomize it, and then you make 5 stacks in front of you, 5 stacks of 8 tiles, and then and your opponent does that as well, and then you're ready to play the game. So the playing area should look similar to this, right? So like if someone's playing on this side, you'll see there are 5 stacks of tiles in front of them, and then off to the side is a point pile where they'll put their points, and the other side will be a discard pile where they will discard tiles when they're done. So yeah, and then players start the game by drawing 5 tiles. They can draw their tiles from any stack they want. They can do all 5 from one, or one from one from each stack, 2 from one and 3 from another. Whatever they want to do, that's totally fine. How they get their starting hand. And when they get their starting hand, they need to have at least 1 creature in their starting hand. So, for instance, like I said, there's 2 decks, and if I'm playing the Tiger Horse Dog deck, I need to have at least 1 of these in my starting hand. And if I don't, then you need to reshuffle and draw again. And likewise, if I'm playing the Rabbit Ram Pig, I need to have at least 1 of these to start the game. And as long as I do, we're good to go. So that basically describes page 5. Turning the page, we get to the tile types. So there are 4 tile types in Zoo Tiles Hime. The first, and maybe most important, are the creatures. So as I mentioned before, the game is loosely based on the creatures of the Chinese zodiac and their compatibilities with each other and whatnot. So there's 12 creatures here, but as I mentioned before, we're not dealing with all 12 in this starter set 1. Starter set 1 have these 6, and then when starter set 2 is launched, we'll have the other 6. So in this starter set, you have 2 decks. One of them, like I mentioned before, is Tiger, Horse, Dog, and the other deck consists of Rabbit, Pig, Ram. So that's basically the creatures. And then you have these tiles here, which are called action-reaction tiles. And there are 3 of those. Let me get those out here. And let's see if I can find, perfect. So there are three types of action-reaction tiles. There are action tiles that look like this. They have a little A at the top and say action. There are reaction tiles that look like this. They have a little R at the top and they say reaction. And then there are tiles that can be used as both, or either I should say, action or reaction, and they look like that. And we'll go over what those mean a little bit more. But this is just introducing this tile type to you. Then there are items, and items look like this. They have the little vase or vase icon here. And then you have obstacles, which are represented by this little brick here. Now, items and obstacles are very, very similar. They really only differ in flavor. They are placed in the playing area, and I'll get into that a little bit more, just like creatures would be. And they're a little bit different than creatures, and that when these are in the playing area, and again, I'll go over this a little bit more, they cannot attack, and they can't be used as an ally in a battle. And again, I'll talk about that a little bit more. Unlike creatures though, these can be attacked by their controller. You cannot attack creatures you control, and you cannot capture creatures you control. But if you want to break an item, or if you want to break down an obstacle, those are options that are available to you, and you can attack those. And we'll go over battles and stuff like that a little bit. But then let's see. Also, even if you if you want to attack one of these, and your opponent is next to it, your opponent, even though you control it, can help defend against you breaking your own items or obstacles. And if it loses in a battle, unlike creatures that are captured, items and obstacles are discarded. So those are basically how those work. And again, I'll go over things like battling and all that stuff, so you don't have to really worry about that right now. But those are the four types: creatures, action reactions, items, and obstacles. So pretty straightforward. Okay, game turn. So game turn is pretty straightforward as well, I think. There are 5 things you can do on your turn, and we'll go into that really quickly. First thing you can do is you can place a tile with a strength and intelligence into the playing area. So this is an example of a tile with a strength and intelligence value. So on your turn, you can take one of these and put it into the playing area. You can do one of those. Place a tile, a single tile. Now, you might have noticed that Tiger Totem, which is an item, also has a strength and intelligence. So instead of placing a creature, if you wanted to place an item in the playing area, you could totally do that. You could do one. You could do an item. Or you might notice that the obstacle also has a strength and intelligence. And you can also place that into it. For your one tile that you place into the playing area on your turn, you can choose an obstacle. And again, we'll talk about placements and all that stuff. But that is one of the 5 things you can do on your turn. Place a tile with a strength or intelligence into the playing area. Now, it was very interesting that I was watching a video of someone who I sent a game to, and they actually put this into play, into the playing area. And it has a strength and intelligence. So according to this, they should be able to put that into the playing area, which I thought was very interesting, because this is actually an action or reaction tile, and it doesn't turn into this until it happens as an action or reaction. Then it turns into a meteor once it's in the playing area. But they played it immediately from their hand into the playing area, which seems like it could be the right thing to do, but it's actually not. Before it is this stuff here, before it has a strength and intelligence, it's an action or reaction. So it needs to be played first as an action or reaction, then it will go into the playing area. So that was kind of interesting. I'd never really seen that interpretation before, but I can totally see how someone could make that come to that conclusion. But no, actions or reactions, they need to be played as an action or reaction regardless first, and then if it turns into something down here, then that's what it'll turn into once it hits the playing area. So that was kind of interesting. Let's see. The second thing you can do is start an action stack. So we'll talk about that right now. We will use some of these tiles here. So like we talked about before, there's different tile types. There's action tiles, reaction tiles, and tiles that can be used as action and reaction. So starting an action stack, what does that mean? Well, what that means is, let's just say this is my hand, and I have these things, and I look at this action here. I'm looking at my possible things I can do on my turn, and I'm like, oh, that action looks like it's a really cool thing. I want to do this. It will really help my position in the game. So all you do is you take the action and you put it off to the side. Let me put it in the camera. So you put it off to the side. And you tell your opponent, I would like to do this action here. And your opponent's like, okay, cool. Then your opponent has the opportunity to react to that action. So let's say I'm looking at my opponent's hand now. We're looking at the opponent's hand, and the opponent has reaction here, and he or she is like, oh, I'm going to react to your action by placing a reaction right on top. And so that's how a reaction is handled. It's handled always after a reaction, and it's placed physically right on top. And then it goes back to me, and then let's say I'm looking at my hand again, and then I have this tile, which could be used as an action or a reaction. So I want to use it as a reaction, let's say, and I would place that right on top. And my opponent and I would go back and forth. Since I placed that there, it would go back to my opponent. If they had another reaction or action reaction, they could place that there, and then we go back and forth until either we don't have any reactions or we don't have anything that we want to play. We might still have reactions, but we don't want to play them on this stack. And then what we do is we resolve the tiles. We start from the top. We don't worry about anything that's happening below it. We just take this, we do what it says, and in this case, what this tile does is it says, if I have any points, I know you probably might not be able to read this, if you have any points, meteor cost 1 to play, choose a space. So if there's a space in the playing area where your tile is, discard all the tiles in that space and place meteor in that space. And once the meteor is placed in the space, then it becomes a 3-0 meteor obstacle. And so that's how that works. So we would resolve that first. We would do all that first. Then we would come to the next tile, which would be this reaction. And then we would do that, and then we would come to the action tile that was trying to be attempted. And if the board state was such that it would allow that, then the action would happen. And that is an action stack. So you can do those. So back to here, you can start an action stack, and then you can start a second action stack. So what that more or less means is you can play 2 actions on your turn. And you can do these in any order you want. So I'll finish going through them, but one important part is that you can do these in any order you want, or you don't have to do any of them at all. And if you don't do anything, you get a little bonus at the end of your turn. But I'll keep going through this. So you start an action stack, and then you can do a second action stack. And then this one is called start a battle. So you can also start a battle on your turn. So how does battling work? That is a good question. So let's see here. How do you start a battle? Battling is pretty straightforward. Actually, I'm starting to get into more of the rules through here. So you know what? I'm not going to go over battling in this video, but I'll just let you know that you can start a battle here. And then we're just going over the things you can do on your turn. And then you can discard 2 tiles to draw a new tile. So for instance, if this is my hand and I'm not liking what's in my hand, I can take 2 tiles, I can discard them, and I can draw a new tile from one of my stacks. So those are the 5 things that you can do. And again, it's very important to know that you can do them in any order. So for instance, even though they're listed kind of like this, you can do anything you want. You can start a battle, then you can do an action stack. And then if you don't want to do a second one, that's your turn. If you want to discard 2 tiles to draw a new tile, then start an action, then do a battle, then do a second action, then place a tile in the playing area, you can totally do that. And again, if you don't want to do anything at all, that's totally fine too. You can just go, you know what, I'm not really seeing anything I can do right now. I'm going to go ahead and pass. So what you do when you decide that you don't want to do any actions is you pass. And if you do actions and you pass, you would draw at the end of your turn one tile from one of your stacks. So any stack you want, you would draw one tile. And if you don't do anything during your turn at all, and you just pass, you can draw two tiles from any of your stacks. So you can draw one from one stack and one from another. You can draw two from the same stack. Completely up to you. So those are the 5 things that you can do during your turn, and what you do at the end of your turn, which is either draw 1 or 2 tiles to replenish your hand. And so that's this page here. This page also talks a little bit about spaces, but you know what? I'm not going to go into that right now. I'm going to jump over here to Overview of Play, and we're already on page 9, so I was just going to end at page 10. So we're really close to the end of this video. But the Overview of Play is pretty straightforward. It basically just tells you how to start to play the game. To play a tile, so it's basically a tile placement game where you're trying to play tiles, your opponent's also trying to play tiles, and you're trying to complete patterns of tiles that are compatible with each other. And so to start the game, to play a tile, you take a tile from your hand and place it face up into the playing area. Only tiles with a strength or intelligence values may be placed in the playing area. So, like I mentioned before, all these creature tiles here, these all have strength and intelligence values. So those are legit to be placed in the playing area. Same thing with items and obstacles. Those are both have strength and intelligence, Now, again, just to harp on this point, even though this has a strength and intelligence value, it's primarily an action or reaction tile. So it cannot go into the playing area just by itself. It needs to go via the action, reactions, and action stack. So, so just kind of be aware of that. Just because they have a strength intelligence, if it's an action reaction tile, it needs to go through an action stack. But all these other types of tiles, like creatures, items, obstacles, those are able to be placed into the playing area. So how do you do that? It's very simple. It's very straightforward. You just take a tile that you want, and let's just say for no reason whatsoever, I just want to start the game with a horse. So I place a horse tile right there. And congratulations, I have started a game of zoo tiles. And that should be in the middle of the playing area. If I was playing with someone, we were playing a full table, this would be a little bit more out here, but since the camera is where it is, we're going to put that right here. And then, so on my turn, I placed a tile. So I did this part of my turn. And if I wanted to try to start an action stack, I could do that. I could do a second action stack. I could start a battle, but there's nothing to battle, so that's a little silly. And then if I wanted to discard 2 of my tiles to draw a tile, I could do that. And again, I could do that in any order whatsoever. So let's just say I placed my horse here, and then pass the turn. Let's see what else is here. Oh, it needs to be at the very center of the playing area, and then it needs to face me. So for instance, this one would face me, and then my opponent sitting across the table, if they put a tile in on their turn, it would need to face them. And I'll go into tile placement in just a minute, but that's another kind of important thing where all your tiles should face you, all your opponent's tiles should face them. And I'm going to talk super briefly about multiplayer. Yes, there is multiplayer. You can play up to 4 players. And if you were playing with 3 players, then it would look something like this. This would be my tile. My opponent's tile would be, my opponent sitting directly across from me would place their tile this way. And then let's say we had a 3rd player over here. They would be placing their tiles facing them. And then if we brought a 4th player in, the 4th player's tiles, who would be sitting over here, would be facing that way, right? So that way everybody can kind of see whose is whose as the game changes and mixes up and all that kind of stuff. It's very, very elegant the way that this worked out. So I think it's really kind of cool how it can play 4 very smoothly. Yeah, and well, I'll get into multiplayer a little bit more. It's not super complicated. I mean, that's pretty much it right there. There's also a little change to the number of points you need to get in multiplayer game, but again, I'm not going to go into that right now. Just to kind of stick with the script here. So, yeah, so you place a tile to start the game, make sure it faces you. And every subsequent tile that's played needs to be, and this is kind of important, this term called neighboring. Every subsequent tile after the first one needs to be placed in what's called a neighboring position to a tile that's already in the playing area. So what does neighboring mean? Well, we go over neighboring right here. So we talk about, like for instance here it says, basically it's side by side. That's really all you need to know. It's orthogonal. So basically neighboring is side by side. So the horse and the dog, if I put a dog here, these two would be neighboring tiles. If the dog was here, they are not neighboring tiles. They're not. I mean, neighboring tiles are basically, like I said, orthogonal. So it could be here would be neighboring, here would be neighboring, here would be neighboring, here would be neighboring. That diagonal is not neighboring. And so that's kind of what this description here talks about. And so for instance, let's just set this up right here. This isn't exactly how it looks in the rule book, but basically, if this is the tiger, who are the tiles neighboring the tiger? The dog is neighboring the tiger. The horse is neighboring the tiger. The ram is not neighboring the tiger. So basically, tiles side by side with another tile is neighboring that tile. And then, let's see. Yeah, kind of went over that. And we'll turn the page. And we'll talk about completing a square of compatible creatures. And then we'll end the video, and I'll pick up the rest of it in another video at another time. So, compatible creatures. How and what is that all about? So, what you'll see here is, like I mentioned before, at the very beginning, we talk about the anatomy of a zoo tile and how important this symbol is right here. You'll see that all these creatures have that same symbol. You'll see that the horse has that right there, nice and big. Dog has that right there, nice and big. Tiger has that, nice and big. Ram. Every creature tile will have something like that. And so, in addition, they will also have symbols that run up and down the side here. And what we tried to do is make it so if it's compatible, and I'll talk about what compatible means in a minute, it's kind of lit up, and if it's not, then you kind of see a ghosting of the icon. So it should be pretty clear, like kind of more what's turned on versus what's turned off. So for the horse, for instance, what this horse is compatible with is this tiger. It's compatible with tigers, dragons, other horses, rams, and dogs. And this dog is compatible with rats, tigers, rabbits, and horses. And tigers are compatible with horses, dogs, and pigs. And you can see rams are compatible with rabbits, horses, rams, and pigs. And so what compatible means is exactly that. The dog is compatible with the horse. So you can see since the dog has the horse icon, it's compatible with the horse. It just so happens that the horse has a dog icon. So these two are compatible. And let's take this tiger and put this tiger here. Is the tiger compatible with the horse? Yes, it is, because you see it has a little horse icon here, and the horse also happens to have the tiger icon. So these are compatible. And so that's how compatibility works. Now, what you're trying to do primarily, there's two ways to score points in Zoo Tiles Hime. The very first way is to form a square of creatures where they're all compatible with each other. So we just talked about these. We just found out that the tiger is compatible with the horse, and the horse is compatible with the dog. And so let's just walk through this really, really quickly. Let's say that I am playing an opponent. Actually, let's have me be playing tigers and dogs, and my opponent is playing all horses. So I start out the game, and I decide to place a tiger in the middle to start the game off. Then what my opponent decides to do is place a horse here. Now, even though these are compatible, creatures do not need to be compatible in order to be placed next to each other. It's totally fine if they're not compatible to be placed next to each other. So, for example, this ram here is not compatible with the tiger. See, you don't see the tiger icon turned on. But it's completely fine for them to place that there. Totally fine. But getting back to our little fake game, say I started it, put the tiger here, and then on my opponent's turn, they put a horse here. Then on my turn, let's say I put a dog here, and then on my opponent's turn, they put a tile here. Now this is really important because the two ways to score points is one of them is to complete a square, like I said before, of creatures where they're all compatible with each other. So as you can see right here, this is not a complete square, right? This is 3/4 of a square. And if someone were to put a tile here, then that would complete the square. So with my opponent, if they are the ones who do this, the game stops for a second. And we do what's called do a compatibility check to see if everybody in this square is compatible with each other. So we'll do that real quick. Well, we already did it before, but we'll do it again. Is the dog compatible with the tiger? Or should I say, is the tiger compatible with the dog? Well, the answer is yes on both accounts, right? The dog has the tiger icon, and the tiger has the dog icon. So these are good. Is the tiger compatible with the horse? Yes, it is. You can see the little tiger icon lit up here. So, and this guy has the horse. So these guys are good as well. Are horses compatible with each other? Well, yes, they are, it turns out. You can see horse has the little horse icon here. And so these guys are good. And then is the horse compatible with the dog? Yes, because you can see the horse has the little dog icon here, and the dog has the horse. So the act of placing this here forms what's called, it forms what's called a complete square, but it also forms what's called a compatible square. And so since my opponent was the one to complete this square, they would remove all the tiles in the square and put them in their point pile. And so what would that do? That would actually make the whole board empty again, and that's totally fine. They would score 1 point for each tile removed that way. So if you remember from the beginning, it was 12 points to win the game, and they just earned 4. So if they can do that 2 more times, they win the game. Now it's a little bit more complicated than that because I would not, let's say I started it and then they put the horse. Knowing that they're playing horse, I wouldn't just, serve this up to them so easily. I'd probably put it here, or maybe I would start some sort of action stack that would maybe move their horse away, or maybe I would battle their horse even, but we're not gonna go into battling during this video. But anyway, yeah, that's basically how completing a square works, and that is probably the most efficient way to score points in Zoo Tiles Hime. Now, one thing that's not, I'm going to go into this really quickly, one thing that's not in the rule book, because I wanted it to be a little like aha moment for people, but you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and let people know how it works at least, is one of these situations. I've got time, right? We're on YouTube, plenty of time. So let's say that this was the situation. let's say this was the situation, and it was my opponent's turn. Let me move this over here a little bit. So my opponent goes ahead and drops this horse here again. And what he's done is he's completed this square, but you know what he's also done? He's also completed this square too, or they've also completed this square too. And so what happens? Well, what happens is they've completed 2 squares simultaneously. So since they've done it at exactly the same time, what they would do is they would remove all 6 tiles from the playing area, and they would score 6 points for that. Good job, opponent. And so if they could do that 2 times, then they win the game. And they would deserve to win the game if they did that 2 times. That is a very rare instance when that happens. And then there's another one. Should I even go into it? I guess I will, just because. Let's see. If this was ever the situation. You know what? We don't have any pigs. Where did the pig go? Well, let's grab a pig. Let's put the pig here. And the rabbit here. And you know what? Let's grab another rabbit. And put that here. And let's go with, ooh, this is a tough one. Let's see. Interesting. Well, I don't know if I'm even going to be able to do this super easy. Let's do this. Okay. I think this works. If we put the dog here. I think if I drop a rabbit in the middle, this will work. So let's say this is the state right here, and my opponent's scored enough points. Let me try this one, and I drop a rabbit here. Now, I'm not going to spend the time to go through all of them, but if you want to, you can go ahead. I think what I've done is when I drop this rabbit in the center like that, what I've done is I've actually completed 4 squares at the exact same time. I've completed this square here. I've completed this square here. I completed this square here. And I've completed this square here. 4 squares. And since I was the person to do that, I would remove all 9 tiles from the playing area, and I would score 9 points for that. And I think I've only seen that happen maybe once or twice in many, many years. So, so that is completing a square of compatible creatures. And with that, we are on page 10. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video for now. We actually dipped into page 11 here, talk about compatible creatures. The other thing is action stack, which I already kind of went into, but we'll go over that again. We'll talk a little bit about battling, which I didn't talk about during this video, and how to battle, how allies work. That's kind of an important topic. And then some miscellaneous, rules to kind of look out for. And that's pretty much it. There's a little gratitude page, and then this is that reference deck list. So Zutao's Hime is not super difficult to grasp, I don't think, and it seems like most people who have been sending sample games to have been getting it, so that's really great. But I did want to take this opportunity to just kind of go through the rule book page by page and explain the rules, so that between this video and the next one I'll do, once you get your game, if you watch these videos, you should have a really good understanding at an almost master level, so you can start right away and you don't have to kind of thumb through the rules. And if you have any questions, it should all be very, very clear after the next video. So anyway, thank you so much for the time. I have no idea how long this went, but hopefully you're still here at the end, and I will talk to you later. Thank you so much.